All right, so we are um, 4 lines from the top on Nun Hey. So we discussed quite extensively the principle of Brim Shebiyam. So we said Brim Shebiyam, there are creatures, individual creatures, but they are not a metzius unto themselves. They're completely embraced by the Yam, and as we explained, not merely because when you stand outside of the Yam, you don't see them. Inside the Yam, they are not individual entities. They don't stand on their own. The Yam is what's holding them up completely. They're completely one entity with the Yam. So they're not a metzius le'atzmon, a metzius unto themselves. And this is the principle of Amudi Isgalio and Amudi Hiskasyah. Amudi Isgalio means that everything there in Amudi Isgalio, each individual entity is a metzius unto itself. It's holding itself up, as we discussed last night. Amudi Hiskasyah is also a metzius, but it's not a metzius le'atzmo. It's not an individual, it's not an independent, there's no independence sense in there at all. Despite the fact that it is an entity. Thank you. Were you on last night, Yehuda?
I had to take a appointment. No.
No.
No, I was not.
No. Okay, so I hope you have a chance to.
This is the card with the pictures.
I hope you have a chance to
Listen.
to listen in.
Okay.
Thus, the line starts with kuli, 4 lines from the top on Nun Hey. Kol ma sheyesh b'yabosha. In fact, everything that exists by Yabosha, on the dry land, in Amodi Isgalio, also exists in Amodi Hiskasyah. It's almost like replication of Amodi Hiskasyah in the Yam, but in a different manner. Rak, and this is, it continues to explain, except Shehabru Yim Shebayam, that the creatures within the Yam muvloyim b'mei hayam, they are swallowed into, sunk in the mei hayam, part and parcel of the waters of the Yam. She'einam b'chinas metzius le'atzmon adayin, which means they're not a metzius le'atzmon unto themselves. Adayin. Adayin means as yet. This adayin is to emphasize that even though they are metzius, they are identifiable creatures, there is something to speak of, but not a metzius le'atzmon. In other words, it's a metzius that the Yam is producing, the Yam is showing, the Yam is holding up. It is not metzius le'atzmon that they can stand on their own. As we explained many times in the slide, that B'ruim shebeyabosha stand on their own power, on their own legs. Their whole presence is presenting themselves. This means it's a metzius le'atzmoi, metzius unto itself. From beginning to end, the entire metzius is presenting itself. It stands on itself. Even though, of course, it has to draw air, it has to draw food and so forth, but principally it's a metzius unto itself that needs nourishment. B'ruim shebayam, they do not hold themselves up. They do not stand up on their own power. And as we pointed out, the principle of the power is not the power. Brumish of Yam can have plenty of power. It is that they don't have a sense of their individuality. Brumish of Yam stand on their own because they identify themselves as independent entities. This is why they stand. Whereas Brum Shabbayam do not identify themselves as independent entities. They are completely relying on the Yam to support them. And then within that support they have various functions. So therefore this is what we say. Everything that exists by Abosha exists by Yam. Except by Yam there's this difference. The Yam that they are Mavloim and Ein of his Metzius le'atzman Adayin. The emphasis of Adayin means yes, there is a creation there. But not as yet to the extent that they should be conscious, self-conscious of its own Metzius independently. Adayin le'atzman. This sense or Metzius le'atzmon, or Metzius unto itself, is a phenomenal step forward. It's a phenomenal step. Because Metzius le'atzmon means that it orients, it's in its orientation. It is a Metzius that is there because it is there, not because there is anything else there. Metzius Yam is also Metzius, but it is there because the Yam is there. In terms of its own orientation. Brum Shabbayabosha, in its orientation, its self-identity, it is there because it is there. Despite the fact that it depends on many supporting factors. This is Adayin. There are Metzius, but not as yet haven't reached that full definition of Metzius.
When we say yet, means it could happen. They're going to reach that state, or one day, or no.
Well, creation in general reaches that state in Brum Shabbayabosha. And Ayin is relative to the entire creation. Yet still, Hare HaKoil Yesh Bayam. Nevertheless, there's an important principle is HaKoil Yesh Bayam, that everything is present in the Yam. So what is that? How does that affect our orientation in relative to Brum Shabbayabosha? Brum Shabbayabosha is like a novel state. They are Metzius le'atzmon, but not totally novel because they already pre-existed in the Yam.
Yabosha pre-existed in the Yam?
The Bruim. Agam the Agam the Nivroim the Nivroim. Okay, I'm going to. Therefore, the principle of Nibruim, of a presence, exists in the Yam. There is just this important difference. The Bayabosha de Metzius le'atzmon, they have reached a different stage of Metzius. And Brum Shabbayam are at a earlier and more primitive state of Metzius. They're part of the Yam. Okay. Now, therefore, if we focus in and try to, so to speak, get into the finer aspects of these two levels, and as we said, one is alma de hiskasyah, and one is alma de hisgalia. One is bria, and one is called yitzira. So let's look inside, and then we'll see how this translates. So here the Rebbe goes right back into the element of Bria and Yitzira. Hagam, even though the Nivroim, the Bria, Ein b'bchinas Mitzius, Kanal. Although the Nivroim of Bria are not in the state of Mitzius, as we explained, meaning they're not in the state of true Mitzias, complete Mitzias, and Mitzias le'atzmon. They don't have a Mitzias that stand on its own. Mikol mokoim, but yet still we have to understand, ein ze b'bchinas heder ha-Mitzias legamri. They are not they don't qualify to be defined as heder ha-Mitzias legamri, as non-existent. They are not b'chinas mitzias, but not heder ha-mitzias, not the absence of mitzias. Ba'oifon, in a manner, if when we say that the heder ha-mitzias, the non-mitzias, then it would mean ba'oifon, in a manner, shehiz hava the yitzira, that when yitzira comes around, yiyeh b'chinas hiskasyah. Yitzira represents an element of hiskasyah. Hiskasyah means a total novelty. Something that did not have anything preceding it, of being a source. No, Yitzira is defining further that which was very existing previous. So it's not hiskasyah. This hiskasyah element is the principle of creation.
That's why Yitzira is called formation. And so forming that which is already there.
So, but that is a different world. This is Bria and this is Yitzira. Yitzira is a Mitzias liatzmo, and Bria is not the b'chinas Mitzias. The Bruim Shebiyam represent the Yam; they don't represent themselves. The Bruim Shebiyabosha represent themselves. The Bruim Shebiyam, it is not incorrect to say Rebbe created the Yam, and as a result there is Bruim. Bruim should be Abosha, no, he created this Bruim individually.
What would that mean in the Nimshal in terms of he wanted a world, and therefore
Okay. So that Yitzira cannot be referred to as hiskasyah, because Yitzira is actually further identifying that which already is recognized, is present in Bria. Therefore, it is not hiskasyah. Ve'enoi doime, and it's not similar. Bria is not similar to b'chinas hed and amitzius, to b'chinas malchut da'atzilu. The way it is in Bria, it is not similar to the level of hed and hamitzius, of absence of mitzius, the way it is in malchut da'atzilu. We'll take a little time to discuss the principle of Malchut Atzilus, but later. Shaharei Neida, for it is known. Where we come to Malchut Atzilus, it's a different world. No, Neida, it is known, the whole Mash and Yizhave Bibiyah, that everything that came to be in Biyah, Yeshnon Bibchinas Malchut Atzilus, is present. Yeshnon, they are present in the Bechina of Malchut Atzilus. For our purposes, at this moment, the best way that we can relate to these words is, Yesh B'chinas Malchut Atzilus means that the Malchut Atzilus sees there are the things the way they are in Priya. It is not shocked. It can relate to it. Oh, I know what this is. I know what this is. Even though these things don't exist in the Malchus itself. We will further discuss as we go. But there is that principle. In principle, I know what it is. This is Pshat Yeshnon B'B'chinas Malchut Atzilus. Shezei Inyan, which is in fact the principle that is expressed by the fact that we say, Mashe HaMalchus Nikra B'Shem Eben V'Ofam Sheshan. Malchus is referred to with the name Ofam, Ofor, dust, earth. Eben, stone, Ofor, dust, Sheshana, a flower, because all of these inyonim are recognizable from a Malchus perspective. And yet, the way it is in Malchus, it's a total Heder HaMetzias. It's a non-Metzias. The Shom, for over there, Bebchinas Malchus, in the Bechina of Malchus, who Bebchinas Heder HaMetzius Lagamri. It is there in the state, in the quality of Heder HaMetzius Lagamri, of absence of Metzius totally. This Bechinas Heder HaMetzius, as we always point out, Bechina, the word Bechina has quite a subtle implication. It is Bechinas Heder HaMetzius, which means even though it's a Metzius, it's present, say, Malchus, we call Evan Sheshana, Evan Ofer Sheshana. But this Evan is not at all representative of a Metzius. It is representative of the Malchus. It's Bechinas Heder HaMetzius. In our discussions in our Rosh Hashanah and so forth, lately we have been focusing on this principle, that we have a street, and walking on this street, and there are different levels at which we identify with this street. We identify with the street in form that the street is something which leads us from point A to point B. From that perspective, it is really a Metzius. It allows us to go to where we want to go. And then, as we speak, so to speak, from a higher human perspective, what allows us, this is an interesting way of putting the question, what allows us as human beings to step on this street without an element of trepidation? Hey, you're standing on a narrow street, in contrast to standing on a rope or on a plank.
Sorry, I missed this. You may think there'd be trepidation because why?
You're standing on a narrow area,
The
a narrow street.
Street's narrow.
The sidewalk is narrow. Come on.
I'm missing the. I missed how we got into this.
You should be able to go in circles at this point. We explained this many times. We cannot walk on a tightrope. We cannot walk on a narrow plank. Here we walk on the street, which is also, relatively speaking, a narrow place.
Mm-hmm.
How is it? The street is a narrow place, but from our perspective, we see this street not as a standalone entity, but as part of of a much broader presence. As a matter of fact, as a part of the entire presence.
Mm.
And it makes no difference if we stand on the street or we stand in the middle of a field.
That's showing no Matthias of the street.
Yeah. So there, if we go a step further, like we spoke yesterday, you look at the terrain, the raw terrain, before it's been developed, all the potential streets in the urban development is present there.
Mm.
But in what way are they present? There's no entity, none. There's just the reality of the Malchus.
The Malchus would be that all this is there to be developed, or that there's the. In other words, it's not just. There's the potential. There's the bechina of the street is because there is. This was all created for a reason, or there's something.
Just the way Malchus accommodates all of these things. It allows for them. As I said, after you have fully developed this area, is it something that you were shocked? How come there are streets over here? Oh yeah, of course. I was able to see it way before. That possibility anyway.
Is that to say that it's also not hiskasyah, or it is?
Oh. And here's where we're making distinction. The way it is in Malchus is b'chinas heder ha-metzius l'gamri. Malchus doesn't, like you say, does Malchus orient himself and think in terms of what streets are going to be here? No. It presents the reality itself.
That's the buildable space that we talk about.
buildable space already relates to building.
It's already Bria.
This is what it be. Malchus provides for the initial reality. Why is space buildable? Not because there is a space to be built.
Because Malchus has everything in it, that it provides for everything.
Why does Malchus provide for everything? It's a challenging question. Because Malchus has a sense of reality. What is a melech? Everything but the melech has to have supporting principles. What allows you to be here? What are you here for? What are you here for? What's your function? Where do you live? What's your name? Malchus is in a totally different category. Does not have supporting properties. Why is a melech a melech? A melech is a melech not because of everything, but because of the principal truth of what melech is. And therefore, everything is contained therein, in that principal truth. Therefore, we can, in this brief insight, we can see the difference between the way things are in Malchus and the way they're in Bria.
Is it to say that Malchus is like that to the Atzmi?
I'm sorry, as well, Malchus is what?
Atzmi.
Malchus is an Atzmi. Malchus in Oir Atzmi. All right. I overstayed a little bit. This is it for this morning, but we got to something. Okay. And Yehuda, if you have a chance, yesterday it was a very, very, very difficult thing. I almost gave up, but with Paltiel, it turned out to be almost everyone understood it. That was a miracle. Have a good day. A good Shabbos. Okay. Really. But we went through.
It's a shame.
Just